Because who doesn't want to win Eurovision, right? Everyone wants to win it. But apparently the UK can't, for some reason. But we can hopefully try and make the UK win Eurovision. So who are we? I'm Tony G. So I'm an ex-Blue Teamer of Friends Prov. I now predominantly speak for Pentest partners. So I just go around the world talking about cool stuff, like some of the stuff that Vangelis hacks, a lot of staff awareness as well. I also do deal with our vulnerability disclosure, which is challenging when you're dealing with a lot of IoT manufacturers. And actually, I created airdropoff.com, and a lot of you have still got your airdrop on. I would probably suggest you turn that off at a hacking conference, especially for everyone. Hopefully, those of you who have got it on, you would have received the message I just sent you. My colleague Vangelis here. Do you want to go?
Yeah. I'm used to be a backend engineer for 20 years, and for the past year or so, I'm breaking APIs for Pentest partners. APIs that control anything from cars to boats and locks and trackers. And my internal code name in Pentest partners is API Jesus, because I usually say that authentication not equals with authorization. And if you don't know that, I'm going after you. So.
And yeah, he usually does. And you also created an amazing project with a colleague, which we'll talk about in a sec, called Trackmageddon. And this was actually kind of the basis for a lot of this presentation, because what we're going to talk about is IoT trackers. And the problem with IoT trackers is that everybody wants them, right? The whole world is going nuts for trackers. The market, I don't know whether this is true. I found it on the internet, but apparently the market is going crazy. There's a massive amount of increase in GPS trackers that people are using for various reasons, whether it's tracking their spouses, whether it's tracking their cars, tracking their speed. There are loads. You can track children with multiple watches, which we all know have been found to be horribly vulnerable. There's pet trackers, there's various car trackers you got down there, commercial trackers as well, ODB2. The amount of people chucking ODB2 trackers into their cars is beyond me. I have no idea why people are doing this. But then on the commercial side, you've got things like Viper and Pandora, which we talked about earlier on in the year, where these are car alarms that also have a tracking capability, or the more expensive products, which we've also looked at, the Tracker, Traffic Master, and Smart Track, which we presented at DEF CON this year on. And so those are actually Category 6, Thatcham Category 6 approved trackers, which Vangelis destroyed. Doesn't say much about their Thatcham testing, to say the least. So some of the work we've done previously, so obviously we've looked at Gator, the world's most reputable GPS watch for elders and trackers, full platform takeover, just by changing =1 to =0. It was that easy. It was really, really bad. So, yeah, we told them about that. They have fixed that, fortunately. The Kids Watcher, what an awful name for a kids tracking watch. It's like Pedophile City, especially when you realize the app that we created where we can track every child in the world. Yeah, not so good. The Pandora and the Viper products, both of those, we had full account takeover. We could select, track, and unlock to order cars that we wanted to steal. Again, not really ideal. And then the latest research, the latest products we've looked at, Tracker, Traffic Master, Trackstar, and Smart Track, all of those, pretty much the same vulnerability. We could track cars in real time. We could set off geofencing alerts. We could disable geofencing alerts. Amusingly, on the Smart Track one, we could brick thousands of cars. Every single car we could brick in one go if we wanted to, with one command. Obviously, we didn't, because that would be quite bad. But yeah, it was quite scary when Vangelis found this and realized that he could, from an unauthenticated remote location, brick every single car. Yeah, that wasn't very good. So the problem with a lot of trackers, and in general a lot of smart devices, is that they share a lot of common APIs. And APIs are commonly used across multiple different platforms, and they're sold by or managed by individual companies. And then effectively what they do is they host different websites. It's the same API backend, and then they just sell different things to different companies. So it might be a watch on one front, it might be a car tracker on another front, it might be something completely unrelated on another front. All of them are basically exactly the same back end. They're usually rebranded Chinesium type products, and so the cheaper end of the market here. But as we mentioned, the commercial end of the market do exactly the same. Interestingly, when we look at Tracker and Viper, for example, Viper Clifford, the other alarm manufacturer we looked at, both of those share the same CalAmp back end. So really interestingly, when we look to find the vulnerabilities in the Tracker platform, we realized that the same vulnerabilities that we'd already had fixed in the Viper platform were now being rediscovered in the Tracker platform because they hadn't actually fixed the underlying API. So that was pretty easy to then kind of make that really quick jump to then being able to take over all of the Tracker devices. And then there's ThinkRace. And ThinkRace are everywhere. Most of the tracking devices that you can buy cheaply on places like eBay and Amazon use the ThinkRace backend. That's one telling me that I've moved my ODB2 port. So this is the Trackmageddon work that Vangelis worked on with Mitch. You don't know his surname, do you?
No.
Literally all online working, which is pretty cool. And what Vangelis was able to find is that 20 million GPS devices that had vulnerabilities in them across multiple different platforms or different device types, 370 roughly types. So this could be a car tracker, could be a pet tracker, a child's tracker, anything, pretty much anything across the board. And they were all from this one original device manufacturer, ThinkRace. So who are ThinkRace? Well, interestingly, if you go to their website, ThinkRace are apparently the smartwatch supplier for the Olympics. Well, that says that they must be good, right? They must be secure, except not secure at the top. I mean, this is 101, right? It's a bit of an understatement as well when it comes to ThinkRace, because they are fundamentally insecure. They are shockingly bad. Not a single one of their APIs will use HTTPS. Every single one uses HTTP. Every one. Across every site, everything that they do is HTTP. It's like they haven't realized that we now use HTTPS anymore. Amusingly, what they do is they provide their software as well. And it's open source. But open source for partners. So what that means is you pay them money and then they give you the product. That's not open source. I don't know. That's not how I understand open source works. And interestingly, they say they've got 10 million devices there. Well, Vangelis just had a quick look and he reckons it's probably a lot higher than that, probably nearer about 60 now of the different devices that they've got. And if you see this, when you use your tracker and when you've set it up, if you see that, you're fucked, pretty much. And so Vangelis is going to talk a little bit now about how ThinkRace is fucked, pretty much.
So I'm going to talk about the monstrosity that the ThinkRace is. As Tony told you, they are reselling APIs white label. When we first saw them on 2017, we were really frightened because none of the API was requiring any authentication at all. And as they were using some strange SOAP services, all the documentation was there, freely available. So you just had to browse to the actual SOAP service at the WSDL and get the WSDL file and interact with any device of all. The variables were just incrementing integers, and as you all know, when you see an incrementing integer and you can access one, then it's bad news, because you can easily brute force everything, automate the attack, and get pretty much everything, because we were talking about user IDs, device IDs. Any ID was an incrementing integer, and everything was horizontally exploitable. They also do some vendor-specific coding, and please go after them. And if you see something that says vendor-specific next to it, it's probably really, really funny. So you will get source code if you just change a 1 to A. Your tracker is easily identifiable if it connects to OpenAPI v and the number. If you see that on your burp or your proxy, you are probably in a really bad position because you are using Thingrace. And last but not least, all users were using 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 as a default password. And by using the incrementing integer issue, you could see that most of them did not change it. And some of them were admins or resellers in the platform. And they were controlling millions of devices.
No, you can do that.
So Thingrace just brought up a zombie attack because IDOR was so 90s, and when we first saw it in 2017, we were like, really? You can access everything without checking anything? So yeah, it's a zombie attack. It's an IDOR attack, actually. There's your Google Doc. If you feel like going after Thingrace, please do. I'm really happy to help you go after Thingrace because I really hate them. I have like 126 individual servers right now that are vulnerable to the vulnerability that I'm going to show you. So, because we're talking about millions of devices, the one is sending SMS right now, you would have to identify where this device is. There are two ways that I found. The first one is quite obvious. You just get the device info and get the latitude and longitude and see where this device is right now. Or you can get the SOS number or the family number, get the country code and see if this is in the UK, this is in Greece, this is in Italy or anyone else, and then you can leverage it to do a proper attack. As I told you, the remaining IDs, you can see in here the device ID 15. You can easily automate that attack from 1 to, I don't know, whatever number you feel like. It will respond up to a couple millions. And it will respond scaringly because it's JSON inside an XML one, and this gives me the chills. But it also will, depending on the server, respond with phone numbers, locations, and names, and this is a severe break of GDPR, of course. And this is the really scary part. So on some servers, there is an admin endpoint. You can retrieve the existing firmware of all the devices, and you can upload a new firmware for all the devices. So if you are confident enough, you can reverse the firmware and either break the device, like me, or backdoor it to do something really, really different from what the device was supposed to be doing. That's 370 devices that are known to be vulnerable. I'm pretty sure that there are resellers that renamed it, so it's going to be a lot more. But that's all that I found, and I was really bored. I believe that 370 devices are more than enough to show that we have an issue in here. Now, the non-vulnerable domains, I really tried with Tony really hard to fit them in, but really they cannot fit. They cannot be fitted in a single slide. So there are more than 80 domains that are vulnerable to that attack right now on 40 different servers. And if you are confident enough, go use the Google Doc and find some server and play with it. So what can we do? We can track anyone. We can change any email so that we can take over the account. We can change all contacts, including emails, including phone numbers, so we can totally take over the device. We can change geofences, and as we can see later, this could be used for the alerts to be triggered. And as I told before, we can force a firmware update and change the firmware with our own. We can also see that some devices, some watches, are auto-answering your phone. So you can scare random people's children, like I did in Australia.
I should point this is Troy Hunt's daughter.
So not a total stranger.
Hello, Mal.
Hi, who are you?
I am Vangelis from the other part of the world.
So yeah, Troy's daughter was in Australia, I was in Greece, and my accent is really strange and really scary on its own, but just calling a random kid is also really scary. I hope that it's scarier than my accent. So, that's it for now with ThingRace. I'm also going to talk about another really ghost vendor, because this is GPS UI, and you can also see it on vmui.net. They have around 1 million of devices, which, if you consider that ThingRace has over 50 million, is not that big, but it's really, really, really hard to talk with them. I have been trying since 2017 just for an answer. I have sent tens of emails. I have called every contact info that I could find. I have also called their data center. I called the China CN, but nobody really cared. Nobody really answered. So they're just a ghost vendor. They do sell devices actively. So as you will see later, they have over 1 million devices online, but they never answer to any vulnerability result. The vulnerability, at least they had some kind of authentication. So you had to buy one device to get a valid login and then exploit to everything else. It's a classical horizontal escalation of privilege, and it could allow anyone to view and control all the devices by sending push messages. And that's it. As you can see, I can set the phone number and the command, and it will send the response for that command to that number. I don't know if it's clear, but the serial number in there, it's 1 million plus something, so pretty much all the previous numbers respond to something. I didn't try it because it would be breaking the CMA, but it's as easy as that. You just say the push number and that push command, and you will get an SMS. So you can do a lot of things with it.
Cool. You've gone too far. Step back a sec. So obviously, what's pretty obvious is that these devices have got a SIM card in them. But where do those SIM cards typically come from? Well, typically with, a kid's tracking watch, for example, the parent will just buy a pay-as-you-go SIM card, right? Because you're not expecting a lot of data on it. You're not expecting to call it. These are usually edge devices, so 2G, so not massive amounts of bandwidth, so just a cheap SIM card will do. You don't need a contract. But when we think about your car, if it's a pre-installed service, that's likely to come maybe with an eSIM or just with a physical SIM just inserted into the telematics type device. And that'll have some kind of a private APN to connect to. And with industrial IoT, you're likely to find that they are going to be an embedded eSIM as well, but again, connecting to a private APN. But how can we go about abusing SIM cards? What is it that we can do? Well, remember we can change the phone number, right? So what about changing that to a premium rate phone line? Could we actually get the device to call up the premium rate phone line? And if we owned the premium rate phone line, would that mean that we'd make the money? Well, yeah. In short, the downside is that in the UK, it's not that easy to set up a premium rate phone line. It costs you about £50 to set it up, and then £50 every year, which is fine. That's not too expensive. And then, of course, you could tell the phones to phone that premium rate phone line, and then, of course, you would get the profit. And it works out pretty good. You can see that's just one provider. This is a £1.50 a minute call, and you'd make 62p off every call of that, which is great. Pretty simple profit, right? We're all happy with that. The problem is that the PSA require you to register with them. That costs you £155 a year. That's okay. That's not too much of a problem. Look, we've got millions of devices, so the likelihood is we're going to make millions or even billions of dollars back, or pounds back. But we have to wait 6 weeks for our first payment, and then every month after that. And they also have got lots of auditing in place to make sure that people don't do this. So the reality is, setting up a premium rate phone line and then phoning it and making money out of all of those devices is extremely unlikely to succeed. But there is a really cool attack scenario, which Vangelis is going to talk about, which is kind of going to give you that option. So what's going on here?
So I'm just writing. That is the ODB2.
Yes, so we got the ODB2 device
and
here,
I'm
which
just changing
has
the
got
phone,
a battery,
and it will eventually get the SMS. We have a volunteer so that we can see if this works live with your phone.
What about Aiden?
Aiden, you want to give your phone so that we can see if I can send an SMS of it with an IDOR? No? No, I need your number. If anyone else wants to give their number, just like we're recording it, so it's going to be on public record. But if you feel like it, please do.
Go on,
if else, Aidan, can you please say it a little bit?
Yeah, that'd be perfect. Yeah, if you could do it. So we haven't actually got this bit on screen, but it's basically he's just doing that, right? So he's going to put Aidan's phone number in, which coincidentally we already know, because we were attacking him earlier on. Bizarrely, he genuinely said, yeah, use my personal phone for this. What an idiot. Because annoyingly, because this thing, every time it moves, it now sends you a text message, which is why this phone has been making lots of noise, and now Aidan's will too. So yeah, sorry about that, Aidan.
Yeah, then let's skip that demo for now, because I don't know his phone. So
You can't remember his phone number?
No.
Oh, hang on.
What's my phone?
There you go.
Okay, let's see if this works.
This is how it works, right? Yeah, this is perfect. I sent Aidan a message saying, can you take a photo of us on stage? And he thought I was going to send him a text message from my ODP2 dongle, but apparently not. That's good. Really interestingly, there are loads and loads of little trackers, and I've got a few of them in my little bag of doom. And it's scary. There's some really cool ones that would be great for OSINT. Not OSINT, for SE engagements. These little things. These things, GF07 and GF09s, you just ring them up and they're a room bug. So you can just put it in a room and then it's magnetic so it can stick to the bottom of the
And they are also microphone activated.
Yes.
So on the next scenario that we're going to see, they're going to be really easily triggered. Did you get an SMS? Okay. Probably the reception in here is really bad. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Let's see if he gets by the end of the talk, if he gets the SMS. So, next one.
That.
Oh.
Got too far.
Sorry about that. So the trigger conditions, as I said.
There we go. You've gone too far, mate.
Sorry about that.
Lots of flicking.
This is probably the trickiest part of the attack. I don't know why it's doing.
Why is it doing that? Let me take that. I don't think you can be trusted.
Sorry about that. So, as we say,
what's going on? Let's come out of the slides because it will load up again. Auto advancing slides. Who does that, eh? Amateur.
Really sorry about that. I can talk without the slides. So, the tricky part in this kind of situation is you need to trigger the SMS sending.
So it.
Certain servers, as we saw with GPS UI, and certain Thingrate servers allow to push commands from the server as you do with the SMS command. So just setting them will trigger an SMS send or a phone call. Now, we get to the trickiest part. If the device is moving, and you can see if the device is moving because the server is getting certain flags like the speed or is moving or any other flag, you can draw a geofence around the device and wait for it to get outside. When it gets outside the geofence, it will send an SMS or it will call you back. On some other servers, that's only ThingRace, you can create a geofence around the device, then move the geofence and fool the device that it is actually moving and it got out of the geofence. If everything else fails, you just set the microphone or vibration sensitivity really, really high and wait for a couple of minutes for the SMS to trigger. As Tony said, GF07 and GF09 both have microphone, and if you have a really high microphone sensitivity, it gets triggered with even the slightest noise.
I fixed it. It's all good.
Well done.
So obviously, we can kind of command it to contact any number we want. So can we actually get it to call a premium rate line? Yeah, we can actually. So I'm going to use one of the watches because they've actually got a speaker and a microphone. Now, what I should caveat is the SE tracker, which this watch attaches to, has been fixed now. So this vulnerability, the only way I can exploit it is by forcibly pressing the SOS button. But prior to it being fixed, we could exploit this from the web interface. But in this case, we're going to press the SOS button, and hopefully it should work if I've got credit. Is this microphone on? You should. I've got a video if it doesn't work. So it now says SOS, call forward.
Just to let you know, this call is not included in our big value bundle or pay-as-you-go one.
So obviously with some providers they tell you you're calling a premium line.
You can find out more at vodafone.co.uk/charges. If you do not wish to continue, please end the call now. Before we continue, I must tell you that all calls are
They love to warn you that you are definitely calling a premium rate line.
I must also tell you that you must be over 18 and have the bill payer's permission to access this service.
But we are calling a line, right? This is a premium rate line we're calling now.
Plus access charge. Call details may appear on your telephone bill. Service provided by Data Pro Service Limited.
Hello, and welcome to the live one-to-one of our upper-class service. So please indulge.
Do you think that's enough? Should we stop? Yeah, I think that's probably enough. We don't want to
have a PT in there for over 18, so yeah.
So you can actually call a premium rate line. So that's pretty scary. We don't need this video anymore. But obviously we've explained that, setting up our own premium rate line is probably a bit of a non-starter because ultimately we would get caught. So we could try and hack another one's provider. What's the bet in that they don't really have very good security controls? A simple phishing attack against a pawn line, would the chances of you being able to get their credentials for their phone provider? I would imagine that's probably quite high. And then, of course, we could then ramp up the calls, change the bank account details to our own, and then next month we take all of the money. That could work. It is pretty viable that we could do that. But of course, we can control pretty much any aspect of these devices. There's a lot more that we can do with them. What about text donating? So everyone loves text donating because it's a really nice thing to do. And, as ethical hackers, the CEHs amongst us, that is, of course, we want to donate because it's a nice, good thing to do. The reality is, with these watches and these trackers, it's actually really hard to do that because in order to do text donation, you need to control the message that's being sent. So the only way we could do that is by reconfiguring the firmware. So it is quite feasible that we could reconfigure the firmware, upload a new firmware as Vangelis has described, and then we could do some text donating. So that could kind of work. But where I think it definitely could work is with text voting, or even phone voting. Text voting or phone voting works just the same pretty much. And that is how I think that we might be able to win Eurovision. So with Eurovision, it's pretty simple. So with Eurovision, essentially what you do is you ring a telephone number, and in this case the mobile shortcode, the 62252, and then the number of the country you want to win. It costs about 35p for the call. Average top up is £10. So you do the maths. Each device could theoretically vote 28 times. 25 million devices, 28 times 7 billion votes. I think we might do all right. Disappointingly, though, Eurovision have thought of this. They thought that maybe someone might try and scam them, and they have a thing called jury votes. So the televoting, the bit that we can control, only accounts to 300 points. The other 300 points accounts to the jury. To win it, you need much more than 300 points. To give you the example, so if we look at the televote from this year, Norway came out top pretty much with a near perfect score, 291. So in theory, you would have expected that they would have won, right? They came out right at the top. Problem is that the jury came involved. And they put North Macedonia as the top. So North Macedonia won the jury vote. Norway, really interestingly, were down in like 18th or something ridiculous. So they were really quite far at the bottom. The jury did not like them. And that meant overall, Norway only came 6th. And the Netherlands won. And you can see the Netherlands won by 498 votes. So, we can only control 300 of those. So the reality is, I don't think we can win Eurovision, even if we hack them, which is really disappointing, but hey-ho, it is what it is. But what I think we can win, X Factor. So X Factor, the reason, and Britain's Got Talent is another great example. Both of those use the same concept. So they use short numbers. You dial the number, and so we would just dial the number. So we command the device to dial the number, and then it would register our vote. There is nothing else you need to do. You just ring the number and it registers the vote. It charges you 35p. Something like Strictly, for example, it works in the same way as Eurovision. So there is the judges have an input into it. So I think only in the final do they not have an input. So we could possibly win the final on Strictly, but certainly X Factor, we could win it without doubt. And the reason for that is because actually the margins to win X Factor are not that great. So these are the total percentage. X Factor don't release the number of votes now. They did once, back in 2010. They told you how many votes they received. Across the whole series, they received 10.5 million votes. So my average, 1.5 million a week. And you can see for the final, we would have needed a swing of about 15% to win it. So in the final, 15% of votes, let's guess that's probably 100, 200,000 votes we would need to win it. Remember, we've got control of 25 million devices. Granted, some of those aren't going to have credit, but some of them I bet would, and you could vote multiple times from those devices. So I think it is quite feasible that we could win X Factor with this, or certainly we could choose who we wanted to win, and that is where I think we can profit. Because if we bet on the winner, much like sports betting, if we know who's going to win, well, we can bet large amounts of money. And like with sports betting, it's really hard to spot that. It's really hard to spot fraudulent sports betting. Otherwise, if it was easy, it wouldn't be so successful. And we wouldn't know, it wouldn't have so much happening. And the great thing is that it's tax-free because it's betted. It's a winning. So it's really, really cool. So we're not actually doing anything that's directly going to affect it other than just betting. Another thing that I think would be really viable is denial of service of phone lines. So if there's a company you dislike and you don't particularly want them to be able to answer their phone calls, well, you can just phone them up with all of these devices. How many phone lines do you think companies have? You get through to a call center, they haven't got millions of phone lines. They're going to have a good few thousand, sure, but they aren't going to have millions of phone lines. So if we tell all of the devices to call the phone lines, we're going to get an engaged tone when a real person tries to ring up. And the really cool thing about this is that most phone call centers are 0345. and that comes out of your minutes. So even if you do not have credit on your phone, we will still be able to do it. So if in the case of, you bought your pay-as-you-go phone and you bought a pack rather than buying just straight credit, I can use the data, the amount of minutes off that pack to phone this. So you wouldn't even know that it's happened. As an end user, you would not even spot it. And it's extremely unlikely to be preventable. What's really interesting is if you're on the other end of the phone, what would happen is you would just, in most cases, just hear background noise. So the call center person would just think there's a load of people ringing up with a load of background noise, and they'd end up having to cancel the call. But I don't think that they would end up spotting it. I really don't think. I think in reality, this is a viable attack. And the other reason I think it's viable is because there is no Cloudflare for call centers. So I don't think that you can call on Cloudflare to prevent DDoS against call centers. But what about barring on phones? So what exists on pay-as-you-go phones to prevent premium rate phone calls? Well, that's really interesting, actually. On pay-as-you-go, on the main 4 providers, and I know there's loads of MVNOs, I'm not really that interested in talking about those, primarily because there's too many to think, and they all use these as a back end. So of the main 4 providers, they are all on by default. So if you've got credit, you can call a premium rate phone line. It is on by default. So assuming you've got credit in your phone, you will be able to phone any 09 or MVNO short code without any challenge. It will come off your credit. One provider is controllable online. So the end user registers an account, they can then turn that bar on to prevent premium rate phone lines. The other 2, you have to ring them up. Who do you think's done that? Think anyone done that? No. I say the other 2 because one of them, 3, doesn't support 2G, so no one's going to use that in a tracker. So they're largely out of the window of this. But what's interesting is this is not just a UK problem. These trackers exist around the world. The 25 million devices are not just UK devices. They are devices that are present throughout the world, from Asia to the US to anywhere in Europe. Every continent pretty much, I think apart from probably Antarctica, has got trackers in them. And so other companies may have completely different processes in place, different systems. And especially when you talk about premium rate lines, other companies might not have the PSA in place to protect us from fraudulent charges on our accounts. So is anyone actually exploiting this right now? Well, I don't think so. I don't think anyone is. There's talk on Russian forums of people exploiting it, but this is the closest we got to it. So the Russian version of The Voice, they got taken over, and 41,000 votes were submitted for this one child whose parent was a billionaire. So I think it doesn't take much of a leap of faith to work out what's happened there. But they were really stupid, really, really stupid. They ended up using normal phone lines, geographic phone lines, and what they did is they had sequential phone numbers. So essentially it looked like a bot had just phoned all of the numbers or got the phone numbers to ring in. On the voting, they had SMS voting. It's rare actually you find SMS voting because actually it's time sensitive, and so SMS voting is not a good choice if you're looking to do a voting platform, which is why things like X Factor use telephone voting rather than just SMS voting. But they used SMS voting, and all of the mobile devices they had, all text from the same one area in Leningrad. It's a bit easy to detect, and the reality is that girl, she thought she'd won, but then subsequently it was found to be fraudulent, and she didn't win anymore. And so I think she's probably a bit disappointed, but they were a bit stupid. With our approach, it wouldn't be detected, I don't think, or it would certainly be significantly harder to detect it. And certainly with something like The Voice, which again is an ITV program, so it'll be exactly like X Factor and Britain's Got Talent in terms of the voting, I think it would be virtually impossible because the voting windows for those open at very short periods of time during the show. So by the time that they've detected that it's fraudulent, the person's already won, or the other person's been eliminated. So in terms of disclosure, so we've already talked a little bit about a lot of the providers, how they don't really care. ThinkRace, well, Vangelis has told them multiple times, I think, haven't you? And they don't really care. The only thing that has been fixed is the SE tracker watches, which, to be fair, the majority of watches that you buy for kids now are actually SE tracker type watches, especially if they're cheap end of the market. I still wouldn't buy them though, because they are awful. But the majority of the products are just not fixed, and they have no interest in fixing them. But as we mentioned, it's not just ThinkRace that are vulnerable here. Multiple devices from multiple manufacturers around the world, they all have these same flaws. Basic IDOR. It's like we've gone back to the 90s where people just didn't think about web development. They just don't. IDOR is everywhere. Vangelis finds IDOR in pretty much every API he looks at. It's really, really poor. But what about the phone providers and the PSA? So the phone provider, the GSMA, I don't think they really appreciated and understood what we were talking about when we spoke to them, because they didn't really see it as a concern. They thought it was something that wasn't really an issue. We're going to go back to them and try again, because I think they've probably misunderstood how significant of a problem this is. But the PSA really responds to it. So the PSA, the phone regulator, the paid services regulator, obviously only UK based rather than around the world, but their response was really good. I said, look, can I have a statement on this? And they gave me pretty much the statement. I've had to paraphrase it slightly to fit it into the screen, but essentially they mentioned, you've got to register with us, which is really, really good. Monetizing it would require working with an aggregator, which is what they call a level 1 provider, i.e. the person who provides your premium rate phone line. And you'll need to work with them. They would need to pretty much be complicit in the fraud, and they would likely to be found out by them, and they'd certainly suffer an investigation, and it would obviously be illegal as well, and they would potentially be law enforcement coming down on them. They also have implemented controls to detect whether there's an artificial inflation of traffic. So that approach where we kind of fish a phone provider and take their account and then whack up their traffic by sending loads of phone calls to it from watches, that wouldn't work. In theory, they said that they should detect that, which is really, really good. And then ultimately they could withhold payment. So we wouldn't get the money out of it. So I think actually from that kind of point of view, so the premium rate approach, I think it's probably unlikely it would be successful. I don't think it's ever been tested, and in fact, they said in the response to us that this is very much a theoretical attack. So it hasn't been tested. So I think that's interesting. I think we'll see. But I'm relieved that the PSA have at least applied some logic. They have also asked us to they've made some changes to the regulation. They've asked us to review those and to have an input in it, which I'm really, really looking forward to. But how do we go about fixing the trackers themselves? Well, most won't be fixed. And I'm going to quote Vangelis rather than let him quote himself. His quote is, look, he's gotten to the point that he just hates all of these trackers, all of them, even the ones that say they're secure. They are probably the shittiest industry of all. Chinesium shit that don't give a shit. I think he went to like the word shit. And most of the server APIs, there's a copy of this brand new server, new GPS from 2008. 2012. And yeah, that was written by an intoxicated monkey. So yeah, the reality is they're shit. So from an end user point of view, stop using them. They're all shit. Have I mentioned that they're shit? But, if you are going to use them, then top up your phone and buy packs with your data, so with your credit. So don't store the credit, buy an allowance of minutes or an allowance of text and an allowance of data. That means that you won't have credit to make a premium rate phone call. Of course, you can still DDoS the phone companies, but certainly it's gonna make it harder for us to be able to compromise your device and get it to phone a premium rate line. The MVNOs they do a lot of more traditional, old-school pay-as-you-go, where effectively you have an amount of credit and then you just get fixed fees. 1p Mobile, for example, sounds a great idea for trackers. It costs 1p for a phone call, 1p for a text message, 1p for a megabyte of data. In reality, it's probably only going to cost you sort of like 10p a month with that. So that would be great, but the problem is you have to store credit for that. And premium rate lines are probably going to be enabled, and so, potentially that's actually a higher risk for you. So my advice is keep credit low if you're going to use one of these. That will minimize your risk. But seriously, stop using trackers. And if you see that, you're fucked. From a phone company point of view, there is more I think that they can do. The default block should be enabled. You should have to request premium rate lines to be enabled. That's what they do on pay monthly contracts. Why are they not doing it on pay as you go? It just seems really odd that they haven't enabled that. But actually another approach, which I've sort of coined almost like a three-way handshake for text messaging or voting. And that's where effectively you say, look, I want to vote for a person, okay, you'll get a message back. This is going to cost you this much money. Text yes if you want to do that, or no if you don't, or just ignore it and you won't be charged. So if you then text back yes, it then charges you. It just makes sense to me that that's a more common sense way of meaning that you can't get charged. These devices can't do that level of interaction. It will not be possible to do that with trackers. If you're ringing up a phone number to vote, have the end user positively press a button. I want to accept this charge by pressing 1 or whatever. I think those could be enough to kind of prevent this. But the reality is the manufacturers need to get better. They need to realize that authentication is not equal to authorization, and you really need to validate those access requests. But please just stop using trackers. I really just the underlying message, just stop using them. And that's it. Any questions? There's a question at the back there. I've got 3 of, at the moment, the rarest stickers in the world, which are, because I've only got 3 of them, which are unhackable unicorn stickers. So I've got 3 questions that can get these, and that person stuck their hand up first at the back, whoever it was.
Hey, thanks. Great presentation. Did you also test the built-in trackers from some of the more premium car companies?
Not as part of this research, but we are and have in the past done some of that, but more directly with the organisation. I think that's about right, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, not something we can publicly disclose. Put it that way.
Because there are.
Come see me afterwards for your unhackable sticker.
As most of our work, it's under NDA, so sorry. Any other questions?
Yes, question at the back there.
Thanks for the presentation, guys. So, I mean, the advice is stop using trackers. Like, some folk obviously have a need for this. So, I mean, is there any that you would recommend that aren't just straight off AliExpress?
Long story short, no.
Yeah.
Don't use them. If you definitely need to use some, go for a premium one, I guess. But don't use them. I would say don't use them, but that's me.
I think the reality is when you look at the price point of these devices, that will tell you how much security testing has been done. Really interestingly, we contacted Gator with that platform admin takeover problem, and we said to them, look, this is something that would have been detected in a pen test. What kind of pen testing have you done? The UK agent said to us, they said, well, if we had money for security, we wouldn't be able to afford a Christmas party. So what does that say to you about how much they give a damn about you and your children and your tracker? My advice, they are terrible. Stop using them. I can't recommend any, I'm afraid. It's really annoying because I got a couple of car trackers which were dead easy to set up but horribly vulnerable, and they work really, really well. And I was like, yeah, it's quite useful. I can stick that in my car, but no, they're vulnerable.
Do it.
No, I'm all right, thanks.
I like stopping cars from grace.
Any other questions? There's one there with. Was there one in the front rows there as well? I don't know.
Who gets the sticker?
I've got one sticker left. Who is it who stuck their hand up first? You're so gentlemanly. Yeah.
Are there any trackers available? Thanks. Are there any trackers available which you aren't actually connected to, like, over the internet? You can just configure it via serial?
Yeah. So I get what you mean. So really interestingly, these trackers that I'm going to grab one. Oh, it's here. So these little GFO7 trackers and GFO9 trackers. When you buy these, and they're only like £6 or £7 off eBay, when you buy them, they don't make any mention at all that they're internet connected. All they talk about is you can ring it up, and then you could hear what's going on. You can send it text messages, and it will configure it so that it will tell you details of where it is, and you can ask where it is. You can also send text messages, so when it hears audio, it will tell you. It makes no mention that it's connected to GPS958.com. So the reality, which is also vulnerable.
That's also the case with the spy cable, the GPS UI. If you see the first post on Trackmageddon, we didn't know that this was internet connected. We got it at some point because we sniffed the data and see that it was talking to a server, because we thought it was only SMS controlled, but no.
So yeah, this is the spy cable. It actually works charging iPhones, which is good because I lost my iPhone charge cable, so I used it this morning. But also, it's got a little microphone in it. And the thing is, you wouldn't think that it's no mention on there. Does it use on the instructions? Does it use GPS UI? But it does, and it's horribly vulnerable. So I'm not aware of any that just allow you to ring them up, but they all allow you to configure them via SMS, and that's ultimately how you can kind of tell it to do an SMS to send someone else the SMS, which is pretty much what Vangelis did to get Aidan's phone to work. Yeah, another question. Unfortunately, you're out of luck because I haven't got any more stickers left.
That's okay.
Unless you fight someone for it, which I don't mind. But yeah.
So with other types of IoT devices like cameras, thermostats, do those have similar vulnerabilities? What's the range there?
Well, not that we've noticed from an IDOR point of view. I don't know if you've got anything to add.
There is a talk on B-side Wales next month that has cameras, and they are adorable. For thermostats, yeah, we cannot release it now, but you should watch our blog. Somewhere in December, you will also see a thermostat which is adorable.
Okay, thank you.
So keep an eye on our blog is the short answer then.
Keep an eye on our blog because you do see a lot of adorable IoT things.
Any other questions? Oh, understood. Yes. Yeah, so this one here. Yeah, this was an eBay special, again, £6 or £7. Most of the cheap tracking devices you find on eBay, it's actually quite hard to find them on Amazon. Or if you do find them on Amazon, you find them at like £30 for the child's watch, but it's the exact same watch you buy off eBay for like £7. But this thing, this was like £6 or £7. It's actually quite useful. It's got a battery inside it, so it's actually working right now. And it's got GPS, and it's fairly accurate. A lot of the devices, they say they're GPS trackers. They're GPRS trackers. They'll tell you where your nearest cell tower is. But this actually is a GPS tracker, and it's pretty accurate. And the other devices I've got, these ones here, these are the ones which are really easy to set up and actually really nice, but horribly vulnerable. No, I'm not going to put it in my car. This again has got GPS, and again it's pretty accurate. So yeah, that works pretty well. But yeah, just eBay. You can even get ones like these which have got Bluetooth, and a lot of people are putting Bluetooth ODB2 dongles into their car. Don't do that. Please don't do that. They're really bad as well. But that's not a talk for today. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.